We're officially started now. It's the only federally funded U.S. ship assigned to systematically explore our largely unknown ocean for the purpose of discovery and the advancement of knowledge. And talking to us today are going to be a couple of the physical scientists with NOAA, Jere, Sowers, and Lobecker. And all right, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks everyone for coming. So to start with, for those of you in this room who don't know us, the mapping team for the Okeanos Explorer vessel actually works here in the building at the CCOM Integrated Ocean and Coastal Mapping Center, just up on the second floor. So if you have follow-up questions or partnership ideas through OER and CCOM, please come and see us. Mimi's up here, she'll do the second half of the presentation. Lindsay McKenna's actually out at sea on the ship right now. Quick outline of what we'll cover in today's talk is a little bit of background on the Office of Ocean Exploration and Research, describe the Okeanos Explorer program. We'll do some highlights of the 2014 field season, which we just finished, and talk to you about where we're going next year and the type of collaborations we're looking forward to. So for the Office of Ocean Exploration and Research, this is our mission statement. To support NOAA and national objectives by exploring the Earth's largely unknown oceans in all their dimensions for the purpose of discovery, advancement of knowledge, and using state-of-the-art technologies in evolutionary and revolutionary ways. So there's a real strong emphasis here that this isn't about really hypothesis-driven research. It's about exploring ocean areas that we know very little about, and an emphasis on developing new innovative technologies. I just want to point out that our office actually has personnel and staff spread throughout the country, and this is a team that really works well together, and the mapping folks are based here so that we can take advantage of the expertise in this very unique center of ocean mapping expertise and get that out into the field. So we collaborate quite closely with faculty members here. A clarification on the exploration model is versus sort of typical, what you would think of as more scientific research, where you're doing hypothesis testing. The lead PI will come up with a hypothesis, do the research, hopefully derive some insights and answers, get it out in publication. You're all familiar with that. With the exploration model, we're really more in the hypothesis generating mode, where we're going to little known areas, gathering as much insights and information as we can, sharing it with as broad an audience of marine scientists as we can, and that in turn generates the hypotheses that feed into this scientific process. So our program is a little bit more uniquely positioned that way, I guess you could say. This is the vessel that we're going to focus today's talk on, the Okeanos Explorer. So this was formerly a naval surveillance vessel. It was converted in 2008. It's really a dedicated ROV and mapping exploration platform. Here you see a picture of the telepresence, the control room on the ship, which is where we have all the mapping systems and ROV work is controlled through. And then through the VSAT technology with satellite connections, we can share that in real time around to different centers around the country, as well as onto the internet, so people can actually see what we're exploring in near real time. And then the ship has two ROVs on board that work closely together to see the seafloor up close. This is the ship's mapping systems. We have a Kongsberg EM302 multi-beam with water column backscatter. We also operate an EK60 split beam and a Knudsen 3260 sub-bottom profiler. So that's our current suite of sonars, and for the future we're planning to get an ADCP as well as 4 additional EK60 transducers. This is just an image of the sonar gondola at the bottom of the ship and where those systems are located. The multi-beam, obviously we get bathymetry. It gives us also seafloor backscatter, and the ship has done a lot of work using the water column capabilities of the multi-beam to try to find things like underwater seeps, and really trying to explore what kind of data we can extract from the water column. With the EK60, this is useful for fisheries and looking at other targets in the water column. Here you see some plumes of gas bubbles coming up from the seafloor and what some of the biology would look like in the upper layers. This is the subaltern profiler. This is basically like a shallow seismic system, so it reveals the shallow geology of the seafloor. So it's another data set that we collect pretty much all the time during mapping operations. This is an image of the 2 ROVs that we use on the ship. The Deep Discoverer was actually built and tested here at CCOM in the deep tank out there. We'll be back here this year as well for some additional testing. Its max depth rated is 6,000 meters, which hasn't been to yet, but we did our deepest dive this year. I'll talk about that a little more. And this is the camera sled that operates a little bit above the main ROV here. So there's lights and cameras on both, and this kind of provides the overview picture of the surrounding region that it's exploring, while the Deep Discoverer gets the close-up imagery. So the data that we collect, both with the mapping systems and the ROV, is really applicable to obviously many ocean marine science uses. So we really follow this motto of map once, use many times. We get the data out within 60 to 90 days of collecting it, and share it with as wide an audience as possible for a range of applications. In terms of where you can access the data, these are links to viewing the data in real time. There's a live feed while the ship is mapping. We typically have the display of the multi-beam up so you can see what's being mapped. While the ROV dives are going on, you can see up to 3 camera feeds of the live explorations of the seafloor. So that's always fun to watch. And so that's a good way to engage the public, and also the scientists on shore can actually participate in real time and call in and help guide the science mission while it's happening. The bathymetry is all archived in the National Geophysical Data Center Bathymetry Archive. So you can go in and query a portion of the seafloor that you're interested in and get our data, or you can search specifically by the ship and filter it that way. And new this year, they actually put out a water column data archive and viewer, so you can, if you're interested more in the water column data from the sonar, you can go and just extract that. And then we have a dedicated Okeanos Explorer Atlas, which just has the data from the ship. So that's a different way to access the data. I want to point out that the guiding partners of where we go and what we map and where we explore is really sort of a marine science community-driven process. We have all sorts of ways to gather input from different folks in workshops, different times of the year. There's one coming up in December. And in terms of federal agencies, these are the typical federal partners who kind of help weigh in on where we go and what we do. So we work quite a bit with the Geological Survey, with ocean energy management folks, and of course other parts of NOAA, whether it be for an interest that the fisheries managers have, coastal mappers, or folks that are more interested in something like deep sea coral biology. So all these scientists provide feedback on where we should use the time of the ship and the resources, the assets that we have on board to map and examine the seafloor up close with the ROVs. So all of this input is essentially funneled into where we choose to take the ship in a given year for the missions. I just want to show a quick movie here. So this is just a time series of mapping work that's been done on the Atlantic coastal margin here, so off of the east coast of the United States over the past 4 years. So this is a lot of the Okeanos Explorer data, as well as other NOAA vessels. And then finally the work that was done through the extended continental shelf mapping. This part of the margin was led by Jim Gardner here at CCOM. So this is walking you through several different years. And the reason I'm putting this up is just to show that when we do cruise planning, it's all to keep building systematically to explore the seascape in a coordinated manner, so that we're working with other ships to see where they've already gone, where they've already mapped, and really trying to build sort of systematic coverage of these large portions of the ocean. And that's really the purpose of the Integrated Ocean Coastal Mapping Center where we work. So this is essentially 4 years of mapping along the the edge of the shelf through the canyon system here, and then the extended continental shelf data that CCOM led was more of a 10-year effort, I think you could say. So the point being that we really try to coordinate with all different parts of NOAA when we plan missions and gather the data. All right. So now I'll go into the summary of the 2014 field season, some of the highlights. This map that you're seeing here is really just showing you all of the ship track and bathymetry surfaces that were mapped throughout the whole course of the year. So this represents all the different cruises we did this year. So as you can see, there's work off in the seamounts, there's work along the Atlantic canyons, there's work here down off the Lake Plateau, down around Florida, quite a bit of work on the southwest Florida escarpment, and then extensive work in the Gulf of Mexico. In terms of statistics, we mapped an area larger than New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, and Maryland combined, and 31,000 linear kilometers mapped with not just the multi-beam, but the sub-bottom and EK60. So there's a huge volume of data out there from this field season, and this just represents 2014. The first cruise we did was a shakedown and patch test and acoustic assessment of the ship. What I'm choosing to highlight here is really what the results of the acoustic assessment were. So we had a team come out and really go through the ship, set up lots of listening sensors, do a lot of tests with turning different pieces of equipment off, running the ship in different orientations relative to the weather, and seeing what the impact was on the sonar systems. So we had, what we did find was that overall, the ship is actually a quiet platform for surveying. One of the things that came out of this was that there was some interference with the Doppler speed log. So that's just an operational thing that we changed after this assessment. But by and large, it was actually a really nice confirmation that the ship that we operate is a very good survey platform. And it's not really, the cavitation from the propellers that was found is not interfering with our data in terms of the multi-beam. I want to highlight that where we've done our patch tests for the last several years presents a time series of canyon data. So we've gone back out to the Beach Canyon site, which is south of Rhode Island here, and that's where we've done our patch tests. So there are some seeps present in this area, so this time series provides insights into how consistent these seeps are from year to year, and it's just a nice way that we can provide calibration that we need every year anyway, and gather a time series that's relevant for that canyon system. For 1402, we actually moved down the coast. This was 3 different legs. We went from Rhode Island all the way down around Florida and into the Gulf. We did extensive mapping and ROV operations down here. We completed mapping of the Southwest Florida escarpment, so in previous years this whole section had been mapped. From largely the ROV legs, there was over 70 scientists and from 14 different states that were engaged, typically over the phone and the internet, while the dives were going on, providing feedback to the exploration mission of the ROV. We did 16 ROV dives, including submarine canyons, shown some of these features here. This was actually a very unique geological feature that was found. It showed up in side scan, and it looked like a shipwreck. So the ROV was expecting that we'd probably find a shipwreck down here. When they actually dove down, they found these strange sort of asphalt formations they nicknamed tar lilies because of the shape that they formed. And within a short period of time, a lot of the people on the phone that were tuned in to the feed switched from sort of marine archaeologists to marine geologists who were interested in what this thing was. So that was a really interesting example of how the scientists that are engaged in the mission can change even in real time as the mission's going on. This was a known wreck that we dove on in the Gulf of Mexico, so it's a very detailed exploration of a known wreck down there. That was exciting. And then there was a very rare and unique chemosynthetic seep community that was discovered as part of this dive work as well. So what you see here is methane hydrate and a very dense aggregation of clams that are taking advantage of the source of energy there, which is chemically based, not from sunlight. This points out, this is actually 2 years' work, so just, work done this field season as well as from 2012. You can see that we chose dive sites and that were complementary from year to year, and the mapping was complementary between these different years. So we have complete coverage of the escarpment. We built on the work in DeSoto Canyon and did extensive work out here in this region. So this is just demonstrating that as we have different field seasons, we tend to very intentionally build upon work that was done previously. This is an example of, we have a very active internship program on the ship, so we bring out typically undergrads and graduate students that have interest in marine science, and they'll sail with us. They'll help be an integral part of the mapping team, stand watches, collect all the data, learn how to process data. And this is an example of the type of product that they typically generate at the end of the cruise. So this is just a nice GIS map showing where we went on the Florida escarpment this year, and some of the interesting features of that. This is what it looked like in a fleeter mouse view of the escarpment. Really interesting place to map. For 1403, we actually moved back up the coast. So we started down here in Tampa, went around the Florida Keys, and the big focus for this cruise, in terms of a big priority survey area, was this area that was called Stetson Mesa. It's part of the larger Blake Plateau feature. And the reason that we were directed by a lot of folks to map here, it was of great interest to fisheries managers. This area is part of a marine protected area. It's a habitat area of particular concern for deepwater corals. So it was already protected from bottom contact fishing gear, but actually we didn't have great data on what was physically there for habitat. So there was a lot of interest in seeing what was actually being protected. So when we actually mapped it with the sonar, this is a view of the bathymetry data, and we found extremely complex mounds, just lots of rugosity here, lots of complex habitat, and you know, with coarse data, this area might look like flat seafloor, you know, from satellite-based bathymetric maps. Here's a cross section through this region. This line right here, this is what the vertical profile looks like. It's obviously exaggerated, but what you can see is lots of distinct little pinnacle features.
What resolution are you showing right there? Do you know? Like 50?
I think this is gridded at 30 meters. So there's the depths here wasn't too great. I think we're 500, 800 meters. So it can be gridded finer, and more features will be revealed about the structure of this habitat. But it's possible that all these little pinnacles are actually biogenically created by the formation of deepwater corals over many, many generations. So a really interesting place, and clearly warrants additional study and protection of, you know, things that would drag through this habitat and tend to level it out. And this is a good example too. This is a lot of our work recently about where we choose dive sites. And a lot of the management relevance is at understanding deepwater corals, and that's just simply we map in a lot of deep areas, obviously outside the zone of sunlight. And one of the main habitats that's of great interest to NOAA is understanding the distribution of deepwater corals. So we've been working with the people that model deepwater corals. In this case, Brian Kinlan has led the effort to model corals throughout U.S. waters. He works in NOAA's biogeography branch. So he'll take an understanding of the coral biology, what type of oceanographic conditions they do well in. There's known coral locations from previous ground truthing work, and they'll develop a predictive model of where corals are likely to occur. And then, so he'll have regional models that say, this is like a high probability place where you would find corals, this is low probability. And then when we actually go map a place in detail, with detailed bathymetry and slope, that's the kind of level of detail you can actually pick dive targets for the ROVs with. So a team will go in, of scientists will go in and say, we want to do a dive in here. This will give us a transect through low deep water to shallower water, or across several predicted habitat zones. And when they actually go out and gather data through ground truth, then they'll see what they find there. Did we find corals? Was it bare? What type of corals live there? If from that they can improve their predictive models. So it's a nice collaboration with folks that are interested in protecting the habitat. Another example of a sort of survey of opportunity that we did with this cruise, so in addition to our core mission of mapping, and in this case this was just a mapping cruise, so we're asking folks what else would be of interest to other parts of NOAA that we could accomplish during the cruise. There was a visiting scientist from the Northeast Fisheries Science Center who came with us, and he was actually looking for documentation of to see if bluefin tuna were spawning on the Blake Plateau. They're known to spawn in the Gulf, but the Gulf Stream's obviously moving around and coming through here. So there's young fish stages of bluefin tuna on the shelf, but then they were finding previous work had found really young life stages. So they said, well, maybe they're actually spawning here too. So we're following up on that, some of that early work, and trying to find the eggs or the early larval stages of the fish. So we actually towed a series of plankton nets near the top and a little bit below the surface, collected CTD casts, water samples to characterize the oceanographic, sort of the water chemistry of that area. And then the net samples are actually filtered down, and these biological samples will get sent to a lab, and they'll actually do genetic testing to see if some of these larval fish are indeed bluefin tuna. So that was an interesting sort of added science objective that we were able to get done on that cruise. I also want to put this in because this was the first cruise we had a NOAA teacher at sea. So we're trying to build out the opportunities for teachers to come and participate on our cruises and get to learn how to do some of this oceanographic science and share with their students. So he wrote a great blog on this trip, which I still go back and look at to remember what we did, all the things we did on that cruise. Another thing that we accomplished on that cruise, again, this was kind of a survey of opportunity. We were contacted by the National Marine Sanctuary, the Monitor National Marine Sanctuary, down off of North Carolina, and they've been involved in a multi-year effort to find lots of historically important wrecks in the area. One of them was looking for a U-boat that was known to have been sunk here in World War II. And they had the search area kind of constrained down to a manageable area that we could map in a day. So we gathered lots of as high resolution bathymetry and backscatter data as we could within that search box we were given, and then we identified targets. It was interesting to me that I never searched for a specific target in multi-beam data, and the backscatter was actually the most useful thing in this particular setting because it was a flat seafloor and kind of a consistent backscatter signal, and then we'd see these kind of targets pop out. This was a known wreck, and this actually ultimately turned out to be the U-boat. So they did a follow-up survey with an AUV just this past summer, and this is the high-resolution multi-beam that they were able to get with the AUV of the wreck itself. And then this is a side scan image that was collected a few years ago of the Bluefields wreck. That was the freighter that the U-boat sunk just before it was sunk. So they're actually only 240 yards apart. It's a really neat kind of archaeological story there. And this just came out, it was publicly released a couple days ago by the sanctuary. So that was a fun project on the side. Our final cruise series of this past year was exploring further explorations of the Atlantic canyons. So now that they'd been all mapped by the ship in previous years, picking specific dive targets to go see what was actually living in the canyons and explore the geology up close. And then we continued our work. Previous years we mapped seamounts in this area, and so we just kept going out into the New England seamount chain and mapping seamounts that really lacked kind of comprehensive modern multi-beam coverage. And this is just a reminder to me that we were, for people interested in the split beam EK60 data, throughout the field season we actually did several calibrations of the EK60 data. So it's a calibrated system. We did 6 new seamounts that hadn't really been mapped in high resolution, and there were 16 ROV dives, 9 submarine canyons, 6 seamounts, and 4 of the seamounts and 5 of the canyons had never been explored before. So this is the first time anyone's gone down and actually been able to look in a submersible or an ROV and see what was there. So that was exciting. And again, for all of this, there's highlight videos and imagery available online. Oh, and this is where we got our deepest dive that's ever been done on New England seamounts, which also was the same, the deepest dive for the ship's ROV. So it's been tested and performed well down to almost 5,000 meters. So that was a nice landmark for the ship. And on this cruise series, there was 56 scientists and from 20 different states who participated. So it's a real asset of the program that we're able to engage this many people when we go to sea instead of just how many bunks we happen to have on the ship. So that's really important capability that the telepresence technology provides to us. I did want to mention a few sort of efforts of the ship that the ship's been focused on in terms of their scientific importance. One of those is really trying to use the multi-beam and the split beams capability to map seeps. So these are gas bubbles emanating from the seafloor. On the Atlantic margin alone, the ship has found 570 seeps, or what appear to be individual seeps. Previously, there was 2 known sites, and these were pretty far south. So we're just expanding the understanding of seeps along the Atlantic margin. There was a paper published about this. Adam used to be a physical scientist working for our program. Mimi's a co-author. And really, there's the relevance of this work is really like how ephemeral are these? How long do they persist? What is their gas content? And then insights into what kind of communities are associated with these features on the seafloor. And really just a better understanding of how broadly these might be found throughout the world's oceans, and what's the implications for things like ocean acidification or climate change. So those are kind of emerging research topics. Along this same line, this kind of highlights the importance of our partnership here at CCOM. Tom Weber developed code that was a way to extract in sort of an automated way to look at the water column data that the multi-beam collects and try to identify high probability targets for water bubble plumes in the water column. So he wrote the code, and then it was implemented through the CCOM's industrial partner, one of their industrial partners, Fledermaus, and then we've been actively testing the Seep Hunter tool in the field to see how well it compares with sort of manual picks that an interpreter would do. And we had a hauling scholar actually work with us on processing data and trying to compare what is the difference between someone going through manual and picking seeps out versus the automated tool, and kind of having that dialogue with the manufacturer. There's an article just published a couple days ago in Sea Technology on this. So again, a very active area of research, and really highlights the type of strengths that we can get when we work closely with folks here at CCOM. On that same seeps note, there's been a lot of work in Hudson Canyon by many ships, but we've also contributed that data set with discovering lots of seeps there. And this is a particularly relevant area for understanding if Hudson Canyon presents any kind of tsunami risk. So USGS is actively looking into trying to understand the dynamics of landslides. And this is one place that we've contributed data to help inform that understanding. Just to point out that a number of publications flow from this type of work. So while it's exploration, there's still peer-reviewed published literature that flows from this work and hopefully spurs other research projects. So again, things like tsunami risk, understanding of seeps, geomorphic characterization of the shelf, and then science more based on the biology of what we find with the ROVs, because that's the first time a lot of these places have been explored, and people can actually see what lives down there. I also wanted to mention that we have a very good collaboration right now with NOAA's Office of Coast Survey, and we've been getting, with many of our cruises, we're lucky enough to get physical scientists from the hydrographic branches to come out and work with us and actually serve as watch leaders for our mapping watches. So these are folks that obviously work professionally in hydrography, so it's a great kind of cross-training with those of us who work on the ship in mapping. And also we're developing a pipeline to have our data get through the nautical charting validation process. So this is an example of place where there was chart data. We went and mapped it, and then there was analysis done by James Miller, who's a physical scientist with OCS. And in this case, there was obstructions that appear to not be validated by our survey. Also, where there's places in the chart with very few soundings, our data can help provide more soundings for the charting purposes. Should also mention that because they're so highly skilled when we're at sea, instead of having to train someone on basic data processing, they can often do advanced data processing, and we can process a lot more in terms of seafloor backscatter mosaics and water column, things like seep detection. So that's a really great asset that we've been lucky to benefit from. Now I just want to show a few dive highlights, just quick videos with some of the things that were discovered during the ROV work. These are all based on the last leg along the canyons and the seamounts.
Good morning, fellow explorers. This is the NOAA Ship Okeanos Explorer coming to you live from the North Atlantic Ocean. We are diving this morning on Gosnold Seamount.
Again, this is a large seamount. It's about 3,400 meters high. This one's a little bit longer. It's actually 26 miles long. It looks like it could almost have been two volcanoes that just grew together. We don't have an exact age for the seamount. I don't believe it has ever been dated. This is actually the furthest east, or the furthest from shore, that we will get on this cruise.
This is the first ever dive that we are aware of to Gosnold Seamount, so you'll be discovering it along with us.
Yeah, this is Tim. I'm driving to the airport watching the feed, and in S.A. Canela, we've never, I don't have my records in front of me, obviously, but we've never seen an ophiuroid like that on an A. Canela seamount, so that's a particularly interesting find.
So it looks like we have a benthic shrimp here. The term benthic refers to animals that are associated with the bottom.
There and show another one, but as you heard on the live feed there, that was our program's chief scientist calling in from his car and noting that he had seen something on the seafloor he hadn't seen before. So
it wasn't a government vehicle.
I'm sure he was parked, but it just shows you that you can really literally watch this from your desk, you know, and so it really gets the exploration out to folks wherever they might be.
So these three were chosen because you can see mapping data in them. It took a while to get the ROV.
These seamounts that we are diving on were once active volcanoes, but they are quite old. So Kelvin Seamount has not been directly dated before, but based on the ages of nearby seamounts, I would estimate it to be about 92 million years old.
And as we explore the floor here of Kelvin Seamount, we have a variety of scientists on shore who are participating in this exploration as well. They are connected to us on the ship via an instant messaging system, what we call an event log.
And very rarely have I actually seen one moving like this. So,
yeah, Chris, if you look at this,
it's definitely a cool shot, so thank you.
I don't think we've seen such well-developed ripples on any of the sediment surfaces.
Certainly not over such a broad area. We've seen a few in small patches that have been next to rocks, but not an extensive area like this. So this is really interesting. We have just tremendous diversity. There's not a lot of numbers of each of the species, but there's a lot of different species here. So that's one measure of biodiversity, is just how many different species we see in something called species richness. Yeah, these bamboo coral whips can grow up to more than 15 feet tall. It's a nice red colored amphipod there.
Stop with the red colored.
Welcome to the NOAA Ship Okeanos Explorer and our latest dive on this exploration of seamounts of the New England seamount chain in canyons just off the eastern seaboard of the United States.
We are diving on an unnamed and unexplored seamount, and in fact we, as in the Okeanos Explorer, has actually been the first to map this seamount in high-resolution multibeam. What we're diving on today is a almost perfectly star-shaped seamount, and what will happen sometimes is that when a volcano builds up on the seafloor, magma can actually get channeled along in a linear direction, and it will form what are known as rift arms. Oh, this is beautiful. Yeah, these are pillar lavas.
Today our dive is to more than 4,500 meters depth, so the pressure will be an incredible 450 atmospheres or 6,615 pounds per square inch. So it's just immense pressure. So one of the popular pastimes is to decorate styrofoam cups, and we send it down to the bottom. And basically the cup has a lot of air spaces in it, and as the ROV in the cup descends into the bottom, the airspace just gets squished out of that cup, and that cup will shrink to a much smaller size. There's a lot of discussion going on in the front row among the ROV group. As we noted, this is the deepest that the ROV Deep Discoverer has descended, and so there's a lot of attention being paid to the engineering and making sure that all systems are fully operational.
I think we'll stop there. If you want to get more, you can go to the Okeanos Explorer website, and there's tons of highlight videos and imagery, which is really fun to look at. So I'll turn it over to Mimi, and she'll talk about where we're heading in 2015.
Okay. Hi. Hard to follow those up, but I will try. Just wanted to take a last chance to point out we've left, as we exit, you'll see in a minute, as we exit the Atlantic basin for the Caribbean, we're leaving behind a large legacy data set that seamlessly connects to a lot of the sea data set that CCOM has been involved in driving the collection of. So that is all publicly available. All right, so where are we going next year? We just got our field season schedule for next year a couple of weeks ago. We really just started real conversations with external partners last week about where to explore within the regions that we're going to. So everything is very much in the works. So if anybody wants to develop partnerships with us, if you come up with any ideas just by watching this presentation, please let us know. Talk to me or Derek or Lindsay. First, we're going to the Caribbean. We'll be in the Puerto Rico Trench, but we'll also be in the surrounding area. We'll be there for about 3 months. We have 2 mapping cruises there and then 1 ROV cruise there. And a lot of the targets that we're looking at right now are actually a product of a workshop that the Nautilus group hosts. It was held in 2012. It was a Caribbean workshop planning. So we're going to take those targets, look at those areas, and see what new feedback we've received from the community. After we're in the Caribbean, we will go to Pacific. We'll just go straight through the Panama Canal and go up to Hawaii. We have a project starting there called Capstone. We all know NOAA loves an acronym, so this one is the Campaign to Address the Pacific Monument Science, Technology, and Ocean Needs. So as Obama is talking about expanding protected areas out there, we're going to start exploring them and see what's really there and see what needs to be protected. Our goal is to collect baseline information to support science and management needs within the existing monuments and areas around them. And it's an opportunity for NOAA and the country to highlight the uniqueness and the importance of these national symbols of ocean conservation. The exact targets, as I said, are still being defined. We have a workshop, again, being planned by the Nautilus group largely, which will happen in San Francisco the week before AGU in December. I think if people want to attend that or submit white papers for that, there is still time. And if you want to get involved in our cruises in other ways, we have new ocean exploration alerts, which tell you during a cruise on a daily basis there's a dive happening in an hour, it's going to be here, or we made this big discovery. So if you go on our website, you can find out how to sign up for the Ocean Exploration Alerts. We're accepting white papers. You can always tune in online. You can join our web chats when there's a dive going on. You can actually dial into the conference call and have a say in where we go the next day. We welcome anybody to do that in the world. And you can also sign up for one of our internships. Future capabilities. Derek talked a little bit about this, but I'll drive home the point because we're always trying to change and get better. The ROV that we have is currently, well, there are some planned data collection or sampling, physical sampling tools that are going to be added to it this winter if the funding comes through, which is now a question. There have been discussions of having a mass spectrometer installed, so no physical sample addition there, but a whole new data type. And the mapping team is expecting to get a deep water ADCP, deeper water, it's a 38 kilohertz that we've been promised, and 4 additional EK60 frequencies. And we're also going to be working with CCOM to test an EK80 just for a short cruise next year, actually in February in the Atlantic. And so the new things for the ship are not actually going to happen until 2016 after a dry dock period next year. More information about our internships. This year we had 13 mapping interns on board, so our cruises are split between either 24-hour-a-day mapping or 12-hour ROV/mapping ops. So when we're mapping for 24 hours a day, we have the opportunity to bring at least 3 interns out. So next year, we have a lot of intern space. We have 5 24-hour-a-day mapping cruises, so that should be at least 15 internships. We have, since 2008, I just counted that yesterday, we've granted 101 internships for mapping. We get them from various sources. So our main is through UCAR, which is the University Consortium for Atmospheric Research. They're in Boulder. But we also work with other programs within NOAA. So the NOAA Sea Grant program, we've had a few interns through. We've had EPP interns, and we've had hauling scholars. We got a lot out of that partnership. Always close the mapping challenges slide in case anybody has any ideas. We're still working on our backscatter and steep slopes. We know that Flatermouse just implemented algorithms. We're still testing them. Lindsay just collected a really good data set over some deep water areas where we have ground truthing from the ROV. So but unfortunately, when she ran the lines, she's getting inconsistent results from different directions. Like the seafloor looks different from different directions, so we don't understand what's going on there. We have so much data and so many people that want it, we can't produce every single product. I think anybody that makes data for the public understands this plight. So always trying to examine what are people using. Can we, take one thing out of our pipe and put that in instead in our pipeline? So examining that is we're doing that this fall. And just adding new tools to the ship. So that ADCP is a new tool for us. We're going to have to figure out how to integrate that into our exploration model. How do we deal with the data? We'll get the University of Hawaii involved there. So those are our challenges. And any questions? Yay. That's it. Any questions for me or Derek, I should say, because he gave the bulk of the presentation.
You've been here longer.
They will hear me, heard me say it before.
I have one.
Yeah.
It seems like you guys maybe are among your big suite of cool toys. You're sort of missing a deep water bathymetric mapping system, either something you put on the ROV or an AUV or something cool like that. Is there any thoughts about that kind of thing?
There have been discussions to put a small multi-beam on the ROV. There are no plans to do that in the next year. That's all I know at this point. It's something I would like to see happen too. Yeah. Go ahead.
So that thing that you characterized as asphalt, you don't have a sampler on the ROV yet. So are you just speculating on the asphalt, or
So that
how do you?
That came from the community on shore. We thought we were going to find a wreck, so the community on shore switched from archaeologists to more geologists. That was the first time that kind of feature had been seen in the Gulf, but other people, other scientists had seen it in other areas of the world that have kind of a petrology, active zone like we were in.
I've seen the same shape in lava extrusions in Tenerife, in the Canary Islands.
Yes,
It's
so
very
people
similar.
who had worked
Strand
in other
shape coming out
areas,
from one spot like that.
they tuned into the weblog and said, we've seen this before, not here. To our knowledge, nobody's seen it in the Gulf, but they'd seen similar things in other parts of the world. So because we could show it to the world, and they happen to be, the right people happen to be watching, they could at least generate the first hypothesis about what it was. And now there's actually, so after we dove on that, the next day's dive was pretty close, so we could map that whole area in great detail. I think it was around 1,500 meters of water, so we kind of just ran over it, brought the beam angles down, and we didn't see that one, but I saw 2 other blips in the area, which I think somebody should go back and see if they're the same thing, because there might be more in the area. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good example of something that we discovered, but we obviously, it generates more questions than answers, and so that'd be a perfect spot for someone to go back and test some hypotheses about how was this formed, what's it made out of, and it's sort of mysterious where it came from, because you'd expect the seafloor, something that was extruded, to have sort of a signature potentially in the underlying geology, but
Yeah, and you couldn't see anything in the
clear.
sub-bottom. There wasn't anything going on in the sub-bottom. It was very benign. Sam?
Your onshore collaborators, are you finding most of them working through your internet links or through the dedicated command center?
Mostly internet. Yeah. A lot of them are in locations that have the I2 feed, so they can have the high def up on a big screen, but a lot of them are just in their home office or their regular office if they don't happen to be on an I2 campus. The resolution is good enough. Or they're in their cab going to the airport.
Yeah, well, that's a better answer.
Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah. Hi, Don.
With the internships, what ages are you looking for, college or grad students? Or?
Both. They just need to, we've never taken minors, but as long as they're 18, we've taken, I think we had at least one person who just finished their freshman year. Because the season starts for us in February, sometimes we're looking at very recent graduates who can sail because they're not in class, or people who need a field component for their graduate degree. So we've taken a mix. We've even taken people who are looking to switch careers. Maybe they work for the Army Corps right now and they want to branch out, or at least maybe work in a different part of the Army Corps or something. So we get interest in classes.
Do you ever do internships on shore? Shore science?
Well, the hauling scholars have a shore component to their scholarships. They're 9 or 10 week programs, and they'll sail with us for 3 weeks usually, and the rest of the time they're here. But that's the only, we've never taken a program intern that's just here. We think about it sometimes, it would be good. Yeah. You have ideas?
Yeah, a couple ideas.
Okay, let's talk about it. Anybody else?
All right, well, thanks everybody for coming, and thanks again, Baby. It's great.
Thank you.